A calm, early evening on a pool in the Mendips. And a great crested grebe sits incubating its single egg. When all of a sudden, the heavens literally open. Look at that. And look at the extraordinary pose of the bird as it points skyward so all the rain can run off its back and it can keep that little egg safe and relatively dry. Nature is full of surprises. And we've got plenty more surprises on Springwatch. I've got nothing against the Mendips, but I'm rather pleased that I'm here in the New Forest in Hampshire, where I'm looking at clear blue skies and even a little bit of sunshine. Hello and welcome to Springwatch 2020, and very sadly, the last of our series this year. It doesn't seem like 3 weeks ago when the entire team was on tenterhooks wondering whether we could even bring you a series at all. We've all had to do things very, very differently. I've been down here on my own, well, with Megan, self-isolating in the New Forest with just 2 cameramen and 2 engineers. But the entire team's mission has remained the same, of course, to bring you the very best of British wildlife. But this year, to use that wildlife as a fuel to put a smile on your face. And the reason I've got a smile on my face at the moment is because I've got some great British wildlife in my hand. Look at this, yes! A male stag beetle. Britain's largest terrestrial beetle. They can grow to 7.5 centimetres in length, and they're on the wing at this time of year, in the evening when it's nice and warm and moist. Now, I'm very pleased to say that when you were doing your Garden Watch survey last year, at least 60% of you reported that you had log piles in your garden. That's great news for these stag beetles, because the larvae of this insect can spend somewhere between 5 and 7 years feasting on rotten wood. And if you'd like to find out a little bit more about how to look after these, then visit our website, where you can find some information from the People's Trust for Endangered Species, who are also conducting a great stag hunt. So if you see any stag beetles at this time of year, you should report them. Details on that website. And you know, I remember picking up my very first stag beetle in Thorold Road. My sister was in the pushchair, so I must have been about 8 years old, and I'd held it in my hands like this, and I felt its little claws on my fingers, and I looked at its giant mandibles, and I was so excited I nearly burst, because frankly I was in contact with wildlife. I was making that connection, and that's what our programme is all about tonight, making connections with wildlife. And the other day I saw these couple of pictures, and they were taken by photographer and artist Ming Dynasty. And here she is sleeping out in nature. And look at the way that the roots of this tree cosset her, and she sleeps comfortably amongst that moss. And here in the open, the confidence to sleep in an open field, comforted by those cowslips. And I love the way that she's sleeping. And her expressionless face means that we can interpret what she might be dreaming about. And I think what she's dreaming about is something pretty nice, pretty nice. That's what happens when you connect with nature. That's what happens when you hold a stag beetle like this, you know? And when I was holding it as a child, it made that connection. It helped ignite a spark inside me, which has fueled a lifetime of curiosity. And what I'm also pleased to report is that during this lockdown, lots of other young people have been connecting with nature, and that spark has been lit. Look at this.
I never knew how much nature and wildlife was on my doorstep.
A bee. It's a big bumblebee, and it's trying to collect some nectar from the flower. They were very buzzy.
These are our tadpoles. tadpoles. We watch them grow every day. I really hope they're tiny little frogs soon.
This is water and sugar for the butterfly. We made the nature! And it made me feel happy because we did it as a family. We love nature!
Wasn't that simply joyous? And as the lockdown seems to be coming to an end, remember there's still time. If you've got kids or grandchildren, take them out. Let them touch it, let them feel it, let them get slimed by it, let them connect with that nature. I'll tell you what, let's go back to those grebes in the West Country after that downpour. Let's see how they're getting on. Let's go live to them now. It's still raining, but not quite as hard as it was. And I'm pleased to say that that adult is still incubating that single egg on what is a nest. And you'll know if you were watching yesterday, we had previously described that structure as a mating platform. They'd been using it to cement their pair bond. But then they'd also surprised us by turning it into a nest and laying this single egg. Now, I know what you're thinking. You're probably thinking, well, look, it's half immersed in the water, that's no good. But as I explained yesterday, grebe's eggs are specially adapted to allow themselves to be semi-submerged, and they can still be successfully incubated, and they will hatch. And I'm also going to report that today we've been watching the birds from underwater, and just look at their feet. Look at that. Surely the best feet in the bird world. Look at the flanges on those toes for pushing them through the water, pushing them down to collect lots more reeds, which they're bringing to the nest. So it started off as a pretty unsubstantial structure, and they're doing everything they can now to build it up and add a bit of bulk to it so it can act as a proper nest. And we would be expecting them to lay their next egg tomorrow morning. So we're not going to find out what happens with this nest, but we will, of course, wish them well down there in the Mendips. Anyway, let's head up to mid-Wales now and to my colleague, Iolo Williams. How are you doing, Iolo? How's the weather up there for you? Pretty good down here.
I've always maintained, Chris, that the gods like mid-Wales, and we have missed the torrential rain you've had there down south. And you know what? I cannot believe that 3 weeks have just sped by, but it has been a lot of fun. And talking of fun, we've had this film sent in by the Montgomeryshire Wildlife Trust's Dovey Osprey project. And as you watch it, just think lockdown DIY. Here we are, Idris the male, and telling the female, Idris has brought in a big stick. Now, it's obviously far too big, but he's having none of it. Telling is telling him, listen, this is not gonna fit. Take it away, put it over there. Get these kids out from under my feet and I'll sort it out. No, just listen, leave it to me, I'll sort it out. There we are, perfect. And then one little tap, and unfortunately, the stick is no more. Off it goes. I love the way they look when that stick goes, looking at each other saying, that was your fault. No, that was your fault. And you know what? That is lockdown DIY in my house. It really is. And we will be going back to the Dovey Osprey project later on. They've sent us another film and it features a rare bird, but it's not what you think. Now, Gillian is with us, of course, down in Cornwall. And Gillian, I really don't mean to be rude here, but yesterday and the day before, you looked like a drowned rat. What's it like now?
Well, Iolo, you know what? I am still rocking the drowned rat look. I mean, it has not stopped raining here today. It's been on and off, but we do have some exciting news here at Cornwall Beaver Project. Earlier in the week, we gave you a teeny little glimpse of the beaver kids, and I promised that we would work hard to try and give you better views, and I'm pleased to say we delivered. Just last night, we caught a few more glimpses on our camera traps around the site over here. And here you can clearly see one making its way to the bank. Now, I thought it'd be difficult to tell without any sense of scale whether that was a kid or an adult, but that sort of doggy paddle type swim makes it really obvious that that is a baby. Now, the other thing that we noticed is they float much higher in the water than the adults do when the adults swim, as you can see there. And that's because they're born with a lot more body fat. And so this puppy fat actually makes them quite buoyant. And it means that they can't even submerge and dive down for up to a month after they're born. And even then, they still remain quite positively buoyant. Now, later in the programme, I'm going to be looking at the positive effects that beavers have on wildlife. But for now, Ellie is in the Cotswolds, and I believe she has one of my favourite insects.
That's right, it's all about ants, red meadow ants, and they occupy in their hundreds and thousands this site, representing a crucial stage in the life cycle of one of our rarest insects, and one that it turns out has a rather deadly side.
Now, on Springwatch, we all have a great range of jobs, very obviously, but collectively, our job is to share our passion for wildlife. But of course, lots of other people do that too, and they send things to us, which is really, really good. Have a look at this film that Chris Conroy has sent us. Now, Chris Conroy is a fan of fish. He's river director and clerk of the Ness District Salmon Fishery Board, and he filmed these bottlenose dolphins trying to catch this salmon. The salmon is leaping and doing everything it can to escape. And we know they do escape because, look, this is more of Chris's film. And look at the marks on the side of that salmon. They correspond perfectly with the dentition of the dolphin. So it appears that rather than sometimes playing with dolphins, because I've seen them doing that and that's what I thought they were doing, in fact, they were struggling to get their teeth into them and the fish were actually escaping. Now, when it comes to sharing a passion for wildlife, no one does it better than our wildlife sound recordist, Gary Moore. And he's a man whose interest in bird song was nurtured as a young boy. He used to stick his head out the window and listen to blackbirds and song thrushes and robins in his garden. And it's that that led him to pursue a career in this business. But of course, like Gary and myself and many of you, you will have noted that our springs now are beginning to fall a little bit more silent, as there are less birds producing those songs. Well, Gary doesn't like that very much, nor do we, so we thought we'd set him up for a treat. We sent him down to the Knepp estate in Sussex, where they've been rewilding the environment for the last 20 years, and some of those birds have actually started to increase. And this would allow Gary to connect with some of the lost songs of his youth.
When I was a young boy, I loved listening to birds singing. It's what got me into birding. Over the last 50 years, we've lost more than 40 million breeding birds in the UK, and with them, the sound of my youth has vanished. Knepp now has lots of wild bramble and scrub, so the stage is set for the biggest box office singing talent I know.
Most people would cut this down, clear it, not have it in a garden. It looks like it's a site that's right for development, but this is absolutely perfect for these birds. And there's one here that's a real favourite of mine. And it needs this bramble, and that is the nightingale.
Since I was a lad, 90% of these birds have vanished, and I just don't get to hear them anymore.
And down in the bottom of this dense bramble, they will nest only a foot or so off the floor, and under there there'll be lots of insects and things for them to feed on. Wow, that is amazing. And in this short space of about 200 metres, there are 3 male singing nightingales. Now, 2 of them have gone fairly quiet. That tells me that they've paired up, because as soon as she lays eggs, the male stops singing. However, this male right in front of me is not stopped singing. That tells me he's not paired yet. He's still a single male. Fantastic. Of course, I think everybody knows that one. Cuckoo. We've seen a distinct decline in cuckoos in farmland areas. And it's believed that specific caterpillars that the cuckoo likes to feed on, such as the garden tiger moth, have declined 4 times faster than any other caterpillar in the UK. But again, here on Knepp, the population is really healthy.
And then I catch the sound of a bird that was once common in the UK and now almost extinct. Since the 1960s, 98% of their population has vanished. It's the turtle dove.
I have to hang back a little bit because these birds are really wary of people. Now, the turtle doves eat the seeds of weeds. And so basically they like wildflowers and wildflower seeds. And again, that's a habitat that's been destroyed quite a lot in this country. I think one of the reasons they do so well on Knepp here is that Knepp has Tamworth pigs that run wild, and basically they churn over the soil. It's called biotubation, and that allows all these new seeds to germinate. Top bird. Okay, this is something really special. Got nightingale that side. You've got cuckoo over there. And then just through the back of the woods, I can still hear the turtle dove.
And this is absolutely fantastic.
That is amazing.
Throughout the day, I've been picking up a sound that I just don't recognise. But I soon realised why. It's a bird that hasn't settled in the UK for more than 600 years.
Okay, well, this is amazing. Here at Knepp, they've started this stork reintroduction programme.
And that clacking sound is coming from a pair of birds with 3 chicks, the first to be born wild in the UK since 1416.
And when they fly, there's usually about 6 or 7 of them, and they go up together, they find the thermals, and they go up really, really quickly, really high. They are an amazing bird. It would be great to see these birds distributed all over the UK again.
What a cracking day. I set out to recapture 3 fantastic birds, but it's been more than that. What I've heard gives me hope that maybe this isn't a lost soundscape after all. Perhaps this could actually be the soundscape of our future. A chorus that will proudly pass on to generations to come.
Knepp Estate, what an amazing place. And do you know what? I'm ashamed to say that I've never actually been there, but when lockdown is over, it's top of my list. Now, earlier on, we showed you a clip, a short film from the Dovey Osprey project. It was the pair trying unsuccessfully to do some DIY to the nest. I've got another clip for you now, but this time, don't just watch it, listen carefully as well. Here it is. It's early morning, and the ospreys are dozing, but every now and again, they're being woken up by a strong, continuous, melodious song. Now, those of you who are regular Springwatch viewers should maybe recognise that song. We featured the birds several times, the last time just a few minutes ago on the Knepp Estate film. It is, of course, a male nightingale. And what's remarkable about this is the fact that the nightingale is in steep decline. It's now confined to southern Britain, particularly the southeast of England, and the last pair nested in Wales in 1981. But what's even more remarkable is that that bird, it sang for about 3 weeks, but at the same time, just 3 miles, 5 kilometres away, there was another singing male. So what's going on? Are they making a comeback? Well, unfortunately, I don't think so, but never say never. And one of the reasons I say never is because just 10 years ago, we thought this mammal was on the verge of extinction in Wales. The mammal is the pine marten. Now, the pine marten was once widespread and common throughout the UK, throughout Wales in particular, but centuries of persecution and habitat loss meant that it retreated to the north of England, to Scotland, and small pockets in upland Wales, but the population here continued to decline. And the last concrete evidence we have of pine martens here is actually an animal that was killed on the road just 2 miles away in the small village of Aberhavisp. And then 6 years ago, things began to change, because that was when the wonderful charity called the Vincent Wildlife Trust began the Pine Marten Recovery Project. In 2015, they went up to Scotland and trapped healthy animals to transport them down to Wales and release them in North Ceredigion. And over 3 years, they released a total of 51 pine martens. And I was lucky, I was privileged to join the Springwatch team to go and film parts of that release there. It's absolutely fantastic. But that's not the end of it. What's happened since? Well, the Vincent Wildlife Trust have gathered together a whole army of volunteers. They've loaned out camera traps, and they have gone out and they've set these traps in suitable habitat all over Wales. And some of the footage they've got is absolutely remarkable. Have a look at this. These are pine marten kits. Yes, they've recorded pine marten kits in Wales every single year now since 2015. And in all, these camera traps have recorded at least 21 different kits. And you know, the best thing about all of this is that for the first time in over 100 years, Wales now has a self-sustaining pine marten population. But the Vincent Wildlife Trust, they didn't stop there. Oh no. They and the volunteers then began to embrace the local communities and got them involved in a widespread pine marten scat survey, basically looking for signs for pine marten poo. And the results of this, you'll be astounded. Okay, let me show you these maps. This map first. Now, this is roughly the release area. So where they were first released in 2015, it's a well-forested area in the north of Ceredigion, with Aberystwyth just on the coast here. 5 years further on, and look at the change in that geographical spread. These animals, they've been using the Cambrian mountains, the uplands and the woodlands as a highway. They've gone south into Carmarthenshire, they've gone southeast to the edge of the Brecon Beacons, and in particular, they've gone north. They've gone into the vast forests of Coed y Brenin near Dolgellau up here. One male went all the way up to the North Wales coast, and there's even a small population here in Clocheunog Forest. And that is 62 miles away from the original release site. They're not big mammals, they're about the size of a cat, but they will move, as the map shows, long distances. That is remarkable. But you know the best thing about all of this, because I have been watching wildlife now for 50 odd years, been involved in nature conservation, and I've seen time after time after time, I've seen bad news. Population declines, I've seen persecution, habitat loss, I've seen extinction. And it's so uplifting when you see a project like this that's been well planned, well executed, and that's been successful. But the best thing about all of this is the passion and the enthusiasm of the people involved.
Fi ffili credu weud y gwir. So ni'n mynd nôl 5 mlynedd, fydden ni'n mynd credu bod hyn yn bosib. Y ffaith bod Belawod yn un awr, bron trwy Cymru gyfan.
So I've worked on pine martens for several years, but always had to go to Scotland to work on them and to see them. So to have them a lot closer to home in Wales is just fantastic.
And it's been wonderful to see how people have welcomed the pine martens and embraced the project. I think it's every conservationist's dream.
There's no way we could survey the whole of Wales if it weren't for volunteers putting in their time and effort and dedication to such a worthy cause. Being part of this project has been so special. I've even got a bit of a memorabilia from the occasion, my little pine marten.
There's no getting away from the fact that it's a beautiful animal, and just going for a walk in the woods takes on a whole new meaning when you know there's pine martens present.
Pine marten tattoo. You can't top that, can you? And of course, the hope now is that the Welsh population consolidates itself, it expands. There's a new population in Gloucestershire that joins up with that, a population in Shropshire too, that they all join up, that the Scottish and the north of England population starts to move down, and eventually we'll have pine marten where they belong, back over the whole of the UK. Wouldn't that be fantastic news? Now, unfortunately, we have one member missing in this year's Springwatch, and of course that is the wonderful Michaela Strachan. She's still in lockdown out there in South Africa, but Michaela has chosen some of her special Springwatch moments. And this one is from Ynys Hir, and it's a bird that I don't think any of us will ever forget.
If I was to sell real estate to a ground nesting bird, would this be a good spot? By the railway track. Believe it or not, about 200 metres up the track on the corner is where a couple of sandpipers chose to build their nest. It's near to water, but it's only about 2 metres from the track. They're sitting on 4 eggs. They haven't hatched yet. But what about when they fledge? What are the chances of them wandering onto the track when a train comes?
The train is in vision.
Oh, the sandpipers just jumped out!
You jumped out?
But that's how close the train is to the nest.
Now, last night we left you with a bit of a cliffhanger.
Did it come back? And this is minutes after it's left, and you'll be pleased to know, yes, the sandpiper came back, sat on the eggs on the nest.
And we know that there's a train due any minute now, so you never know. We might be seeing her get off the nest. Hold on,
Where's the train? No way! But she seems to be walking along the side of the track, a little bit too close, if you ask me, and you can see her bobbing away there. She predictably goes back to the nest, the next train comes, and look at her! She's going towards the railway track! Oh, my goodness, she flies away just in time. But you know, guys, it gets a bit worse. She's actually right next to the track now. You can hear the train in the distance. Guess what she does? She goes along the railway track. Still hear the train. Oh, my goodness, what happened? Well, you'll be glad to hear that she did fly off in time, and there she is, safely coming back to the nest. I think she's bobbing a bit more than usual there, isn't she? It's always a little bit of a worry, though, isn't it, Chris? Because you see the train, you see them run towards it.
If they take off in front of the train, then that could be a real problem. We unfortunately can't see what they're doing, but fingers crossed, up until this stage, they've clearly been veering out of its way. What a weekend we've had.
The reserve was hit by severe weather and flooding. Look at this. Our production village has turned into a lake. By Friday, we had to evacuate, and there was a huge effort to save as much equipment as possible.
A raging torrent of water. That is what was funneling straight into the Springwatch camp.
Well, I can tell you, it did survive. Because it chose a really good spot this weekend.
It's up on an embankment. The thing is, Michaela, she's been sat on those eggs for a long... She and he, they've been taking turns, been sat on those eggs for a long time. They haven't been turning them. Now, that's a bit unusual. And we think that they really must hatch before Thursday, or there might be a problem.
But also, Chris, you know, the adult, maybe 2, we don't know, but definitely 1 adult has survived. But how has that weather affected the eggs, even if they were turning them?
Well, if they were off of them, they could get chilled. And, of course, the later that occurs during the incubation period, the more damaging it could be. But we don't know. We lost our cameras. They could have been off them for hours. They could have been sat tight like the bird is now. Let's hope it's the latter.
Now, I have some breaking news, and I'm very pleased to tell you that I was wrong. The eggs have hatched. And there we go, the common sandpiper is making a lot of movement. And what is underneath? A little chick. Can you imagine the excitement when we saw that? The train comes predictably, the adult gets off, but it goes back, sits down again, moves around a lot, fidgets,
And there's a second chick. And the adult is taking the egg away from the nest so that predators don't know where the nest is. And then there's a third one that seems to have tumbled out the nest. All three of them are getting under the warmth of those feathers. And then the train comes past. Adult still gets off the nest. The fourth chick has now hatched. But as I say, what a star! Been with us since the beginning and delivers at the end.
Now, I've been working with Michaela Strachan for the best part of, I dare say, 30 years, and I never have I seen her get so excited as when those sandpipers hatched. She nearly burst, honestly. She was massively into those sandpipers. Oh, I can't tell you the whole thing. It was just, you know, up and down.
What a roller coaster.
It was.
Honestly, I think my heart rate went up watching that VT. I was just, oh, God.
Oh, honestly, I'm so pleased we managed to get that in. And we've been missing Michaela, of course, this series, but we're sincerely hoping that she can be back for Autumn Watch. Now, when I was a teenager, I was studying badgers, and very often I had the time to go out once or twice or maybe actually, sometimes 7 nights a week. I would be badger watching. But in recent years, I haven't had that sort of time until the lockdown. And then I started going out into the national park to visit this set and watch the badgers. And of course, it's been much quieter. There haven't been hardly any people out there. So the badgers have been coming out in daylight. It's always a delicate balance as how close you get. You must never disturb the animals, but of course you want to get a great view. And the great view of this set has meant that I've seen something that I've never seen before, because as you can see here, not all the badgers are marked like typical badgers. Some of them are much paler.
They are, and we've really been appreciating the badgers quite close by. But we're not the only ones. We were sent in this question from Carol Tully. She's been admiring those pale badgers just as much as we have. But she asked the question, why are badgers black and white? And that's a very good question. Well, how are they black originally? And that's due to something called melanin, which is responsible for producing dark pigmentation. It comes from melanocytes. But why be black and white as a badger? Well, of course, they're a nocturnal animal, and nocturnal animals don't really see colour very well, so there's no point wasting all that energy in being brightly coloured. It also helps them for camouflage. But they also have this striped face, very, very vivid and striking. And the reason being for that is we believe it evolved at the time when wolves and bears once roamed the UK and would have happily snacked on a badger. We believe it's to warn predators, basically saying, if you're going to come and bite me, then I'm going to bite you back, and I've got really powerful jaws too.
And they are quite distinctive when you're out at night. If you're ever going to see a badger, what you see are those stripes pointing directly at those very sharp and strong jaws.
But we've been enjoying, of course, all the badgers on our set, and we've got different coloured ones. Have a look at this. This is a red badger. Now, it's red because it's something called erysitic. Now, we don't really know too much about erysitic mammals, but what we believe it is the overproduction of red pigmentation that overrides dark pigmentation. So they are much more red.
Much more red, the erysitic badger. But then again, when you look more closely at this social group of animals, you'll see this animal. And this animal is definitely not red, but it's certainly pale. It's one of the cubs from this year, and you can see it's still got those facial stripes there. So we were thinking this might be what we call a leucistic animal. And leucism is another genetically controlled trait that affects the distribution of pigment during the embryo stage, but it can lead to much paler animals like that one.
And then we saw another individual. Now, we believe that this could potentially be albino, but we're not entirely sure, because true albinos would not necessarily display any kind of pigmentation whatsoever. It's when melanin is entirely not produced. But one way to tell if an animal is albino, of course, is by looking at the eye, because the iris has a lot of pigmentation in it. And when an albino animal is doesn't have that pigmentation, of course, you can see the red blood vessels right at the back of the eye, which we all have, but we can see it when the pigmentation doesn't exist.
Yeah, and when I was looking at them out in the woods through my binoculars, at one point that animal walked through the sun and it caught its eye and it appeared to glow like a little red ruby, making me think it was potentially albino. But let's look at all of them side by side now. So here on the left, we've got the very clearly aesthetic badger with that red coloration. In the middle, you've got the animal where you can still see the stripes, but it's quite pale. And on the other side, you've got the animal which we thought could be potentially albino, because I thought it had red eyes. Well, we've been talking about this. It's quite complicated, the genetics. There could be as many as 200 genes in these animals which potentially have the capability of affecting their pigmentation. And sometimes those genes are linked together and could lead to, therefore, a decline in that pigmentation. However, for an animal to be a mammal, to be a true albino, that means that there can be no melanin at all. Other pigments could be there, but in mammals there are no other pigments that produce colour in their pelage. So albino means no melanin, which means no stripes at all on the head. And I don't know what you think. I think it might be a little faint stripe there, which means it's probably not a true albino, but nevertheless, it's been putting a smile on my face this spring, meeting these animals.
They really have been a shining light in amongst the darkness, quite literally, for us.
They certainly have. They certainly have. What a treat. What a treat. Anyway, let's go down to Ellie now in Gloucestershire in her Golden Valley. She's going to, you know, be having some trouble, Megs, to trump, I think, a blonde badger tonight.
I will take your badger and I'll raise you this beautiful limestone grassland, a stronghold of the rare and mysterious large blue butterfly. Beautiful. But, well, scientists set about trying to figure out precisely what it was they needed, including exploiting the humble ant. Now, they've got quite a curious life cycle, and it goes something like this. They're at adulthood at the moment. They emerged a little bit early this year because of the spring, and we've seen a few around today, and they'll mate. Now, once they've done that, the female will head down to the wild thyme. Now, they manage this site specifically for wild thyme. They graze it heavily over the winter. The horses have recently come off, and it's the wild thyme that they're after. And timing is crucial. She'll lay her eggs on the buds of the wild thyme. And that's because when the caterpillars hatch, they need the flowers and the seeds of the wild thyme. They'll do that for about 3 weeks or so, going through several instars before they drop to the ground. And now this is where it all gets a little bit sneaky. In the footage you're about to see, it's the pink thing you're looking out for. That's our caterpillar. It'll stick around maybe even for an hour or more. It will also create and mimic the chemicals that ants produce to recognise each other within the nest. And it just so happens that the caterpillar is roughly the same size as the ant grub. So the ant will make the decision to pick it up, mistaking it for one of its own, take it down into the nest, and thereby seal its fate. Now, I thought it would be good for us to take a kind of closer look. Firstly, because we love using the macro lens, but secondly, because how often do we really pay attention to ants? Let me see if I can get some good shots in there. Hang on. There we go. Now, normally we would see, we consider really the kind of community of ants. We don't pay too much attention to them. But if you imagine a single individual making that decision can make all the difference to a completely different species. Now, this is where it all gets a little bit gruesome. Once it's down in the nest, it will convert from being a plant eater to an ant grub devourer. For the next 10 months, sometimes even more, it will devour the ant grubs. And how does it get away with it? Well, the way it does it, and this was the kind of light bulb moment for scientists, was that it mimics the behaviour, the chemistry. It fine-tunes that chemistry of the ants, and it even makes the same sound that the queen ant makes, and thereby raises its status in the nest, getting the royal treatment. And the reason that's important is that when they go down into the nests of other species of ants, they can't get away with it. They recognise it as not one of their own, and they kill it. But not so with this very species, Myrmica sabuleti. They've got a very, very important relationship for the large blue. Now, after 10 months, maybe even more of devouring grubs, about earlier on in the week, they'll pump those up with hemolymph, which is a kind of insect blood, and the cycle will continue. How fabulous is that? And how mind-blowing entomology is generally, particularly just at lilliput scale. But imagine that scaled up at adult size. Well, we'd be terrified and amazed in equal measure. But I also think it means we need to celebrate and recognise the work of scientists and conservationists who put it into practice, so that here on Daneway Banks, just a mile from my house, one of the best sights in the world to see the large blue butterfly. How about that? Now, Springwatch has teamed up with the Open University and they're doing some research on insect pollinators, and they're keen for you to get involved. So all you have to do is head over to the Springwatch website and click on the links to Pollinator Watch, Open University Pollinator Watch. Now, throughout this series, we've been trying to slow down and create a mindful moment where we can enjoy the sounds and the sights of nature peacefully. And for our final one in the series, Steve Phillips, who's currently up with Iolo in Mid Wales, has made this beautiful film about his garden pond in Wales.
Just beautiful. And from one amazing pond to another, we have out here on our beaver pond, one of the animals out right now, having a little rummage around. It's exploring its territory. They do this every evening. And it is so peaceful to watch it swimming through, almost silently. And as they come out at this time, they'll forage, they'll explore their territory, inspect their dams. All the rain we've had recently, in the last night, even today, I'm sure there's going to be plenty to do. But right now, this lovely, lovely animal feels like it's just enjoying the kind of stretch and freedom, having been in its beaver lodge all day long. And out it is now. And on this program, we talk so much about the importance of ponds, because even a small pond can make a really, really big difference. And I learned something today that really surprised me. In 1880, England and Wales was estimated to have 800,000 ponds. And in a little over 100 years, that number plummeted to just over 230,000 ponds. So we've lost about 3/4 of this really amazing habitat. Now, ponds and wetland habitat in terms of biodiversity really do punch above their weight, and they support some really, really surprising species like this grass snake over here. Now, the grass snake is actually famously misnamed because it's more associated with water. But this big showy predator here belies the presence of a whole intricate network of life. And beavers can supercharge these systems. As a keystone species, the dams that they build help to create all of this habitat, and it really benefits other wildlife. Now, there's some really amazing research that shows that beaver ponds like this can support up to 50% more unique species than ponds made by any other means. And it's not just what goes on out there in the water, it's what they do at the water's edge over here that also makes a difference, because their feeding behavior includes browsing and nibbling on these water edges. And they open up space and create light for these beaver meadows where wildflowers can thrive and establish. And of course, where we have flowers and beautiful plants like this, well, that will attract the pollinators as well. And the pollinators themselves will boost plant life and boost more invertebrate life. And that in turn then supplies food up the food chain for the birds, the bats, the large mammals. So evidence shows that beavers and their presence and their activity has this knock-on effect, a cascade effect for the benefit of wildlife. But what about people? Well, Cornwall Beaver Project is based in a working farm, Woodland Valley Farm. It's surrounded on all sides by agricultural land. And a little bit north from here, there's a longer running reintroduction program of free-roaming beavers on the River Otter in Devon. And that trial came to its conclusion this year. And the data there shows clear benefits for wildlife, for habitats, and for people as well. However, it's not a one-size-fits-all solution in terms of beaver reintroductions. In some places, particularly low-lying, intensively drained agricultural land, they can have an impact. But the study shows that even there are things that can be done to mitigate this impact, especially when you've got these cornerstones of good communication and good community relations. So there are ways that in the right places we can accommodate this incredible species, and that's particularly in headwaters where beavers can bring really, really enormous benefits. So it's an incredible study that shows that apart from creating the species-rich habitat, it can also help with flood management, it can help retain water during droughts, it can even help clean up pollution and improve our water quality. And what's really extraordinary when I consider this is I've been here watching these animals for the last 3 weeks, and it's amazing because this is a species that was hunted to extinction in the UK and has been absent for centuries, but now it's back. And it seems that it can help, at least with some very 21st century problems. So I think that's quite extraordinary. Now, we know that this year has presented lots of challenges and is continuing to for all of us in different ways. And I'm not going to lie, the last few weeks have been really emotional, but being here for me has been absolutely wonderful. And I really want to take this opportunity to thank the farmer, Chris Jones, and his whole family for making me feel like I've got a home from home over here. And I just thought it'd be really nice to hear from Chris himself about how he feels about these extraordinary animals.
The day the beavers were released here was a really, really wonderful day. Seeing these animals back in this habitat for the first time in probably 1,000 years. Back into a habitat that they really should be in was just magical. While we've had to really slow down and step back from our normal busy lives, it's been much more noticeable that nature just cracks on. With the beavers in particular, it's really life-affirming to see them just getting on with things. Having the beavers has been an absolute delight. You know, any day of the week you can come down and it's a little bit different from the day before. You know, we are a fundamental part of nature ourselves, and I'm really hoping that this crisis is going to show us that we need to have a much, much closer affinity with nature and learn to live with it and help it. If nature isn't thriving, then neither are we.
Poignant, pertinent and important words from Chris there. The beaver is a great asset to other wildlife.
It really is, but sadly we are drawing closer to the end of the programme and indeed the series. But let's take one last look at some of our nests. Here is the nest of a firecrest. Have a look at this. Now, originally we knew that there were 7 eggs laid in this nest. We're not entirely sure how many have hatched, and that's largely because of the domed structure of the nest. It's incredibly deep, but we know that there's at least 5 of them in there. And now from hatching, they take about 19 to 20 days to hatch, and they hatched around the 30th of May. So they've got a little while to go before they're off. But look there, what's circled? She has a caterpillar on her head. Well, the adult has a caterpillar on her head. I wonder how that got there. But they're really busy. Both adults are provisioning their young. So hopefully they will be fledging relatively soon. And once they do, the adults will provision them for up to 11 days.
They move off if they get them out of the nest, but I have to say they're quite susceptible to predation from things like jays, and that little nest is pretty fragile.
It's tiny.
High winds sometimes tip them out of the trees. We've seen that with Goldcrest on Springwatch before, but when it comes to high winds, if you're worrying about the firecrest, take a look at the kites, because again, out there in South Wales, these animals have built their nest 21 metres up in a spruce tree. Spruce trees are pretty flexible, as you can see when the wind blows. Look at this, look! And thankfully those two youngsters are big enough and robust enough to hang on in the wind. And you can see them hunkering down there, trying to keep out of that wind. They're big enough to feed themselves at the moment. One's a little bit bigger than the other one, and the adults are coming in, bringing them a great range of food. That nest is a mess, I can tell you. I mean, I love the kites, but they really should tidy up a little bit.
You'd have thought they'd have done that.
Fantastic. When they fledge, what's going to happen is that these young birds, if they successfully survive, will probably move away for 2 or 3 years, and then they have an instinctive urge to come back to the area where they were hatched. So they could come back into South Wales and choose a spot there to breed for themselves. And at the moment, the UK population of kites is the only population that's growing in Europe. We've got up to nearly 4,000 pairs of these birds. Top conservation success story, but not the only one.
No, my favourite conservation success story that I've heard in, I don't know, such a long time. We have white storks officially hatched in the UK for the first time since 1416. So there's 3 chicks here that have hatched, and they are pretty small at the moment, but they are doing so well. They've grown really, really large. In fact, they've grown so big that next week they will be ringed, and that's a great opportunity for them to get biological measures that are going to contribute to science. So we'll get biometric samples from that, and they hatched on the 15th, so no wonder they have grown pretty quickly. But they will get independence in flight in about 2 months, after about 2 months after they've hatched. So of course they're about 1 month into it so far. They've got another month to go before they are entirely independent and ready to go off by themselves.
Imagine this, you know, a bit later on in the summer, you and I are up on that hill, staring up into this sky, and those storks fly over.
Could you imagine?
That would be fantastic, wouldn't it? Hey, look, running out of time. Live nest. Let's take a look at our live song thrush. It's our last opportunity for Springwatch to take a look at this. And there, look at that. There are those youngsters hunkering down in the nest. 4 of them there. Absolutely superb. The grebes. One last look at the grebe. Come on, let's squeeze in a grebe before we have to go. Yes!
The grebe.
Great crested grebe. Stunning bird. But I'm afraid to say that is all we have time for today's programme and the entire series. So votes of thanks are certainly warranted, and certainly to Ellie Harrison, who's done a great job for us down in Gloucestershire there. You've given us grass snakes, you've sniffed the otter sprain, and today large blues. Ellie, thanks so much.
Oh, you know, I've really loved it. And what I've really loved about this spring is slowing down and matching the rhythm of nature and feeling each passing day, the beats heading towards the solstice, my favourite time of year. We're still not even there yet. And thank you for letting me share with you the delights, the treasures of my Golden Valley.
Ellie, you are most welcome. We also ought to thank Steve Backshaw and Gordon Buchanan, who also joined us as guest presenters, and my erstwhile colleague, the one and only brilliant naturalist, Yolo Williams.
Yeah, do you know the wonderful thing, Chris, is that for the first time in decades, I've been able to watch spring unfold before my very eyes here in my home county of Montgomeryshire. And what's made it extra special is being able to share it with all of you.
Now, when we were drawing straws for locations, I think Gillian probably thought she's got the longest one when it would come to weather down there in the West Country. But the weather, I'm afraid, Gillian, has been terrible. But we've all been very jealous of your great views of those beavers.
Yes, indeed. It has stopped raining, but I tell you, even with the rain, I've loved being here. I've called it my little pocket of wilderness, and it's been amazing. It's like watching nature reboot. And of course, it's been a joy to share that with you and, of course, bring you the beavers.
Now, whilst it is the end of the series, you can still keep in touch with us on our social media. Use hashtag BBC Springwatch to keep up to date.
It's been a very different spring. And I think I can speak for the entire Springwatch team when I say it's been an extraordinary privilege for us to bring you views of the nature that we love so much. But we've saved the last burst of this spring and this Springwatch to celebrate all of the nature that you have connected with in these uncertain and difficult times. It's been truly fantastic to watch. We'll see you again soon. Goodbye.
Bye.
We've just gone through a spring the likes of which none of us have ever experienced before. But you know, through its darkest days, we've come to rely on one thing to help get us through: the natural world. And as this spring, this spectacular spring, has continued to blossom and unfurl, we've had an opportunity to connect with nature in a way that we've never experienced before.
It's been amazing to discover how much peace and beauty can be found right outside your door.
It's the little moments, like seeing the hawthorn come into leaf or the first swift fly over. It's those little joyous moments that have really helped us get through.
On our walks and from our windows, the spectacle of this spring has been more important and more precious than ever. It's captured our imaginations and helped to heal our minds.
Since lockdown, we've been in our tiny garden shielding, and that's kept us healthy, and the song of the blackbird has kept us sane.
We've enjoyed having the time to slow down and really watch this spring happen this year more than we ever have done before.
The wildlife that surrounds us has united us through stories of hope and of wonder. Our natural world is a common bond that we can all share together.
I really hope that this is a turning point in the way that we view nature.
If we look after nature, nature will look after us.
We're still all on this journey, but we're on it together. Nature's been there for us, and we will need to be there for it, to ensure that it survives for future generations. Stay safe, look after yourselves, and rest assured, we'll be back for you in the autumn.